Chapter 27. And where were all the animal-loving relatives when we needed them most? I remember it was a lovely, peaceful day. I was practicing walking in my spike heels and debating about going to the grocery and showing them off when Eric dashed into the house screaming. I figured he was complaining again about the goat, but he began tugging at me. "The cows are eating our flowers." I figured it couldn't be true because Arlo spent every meeting at the peg complaining that every four-legged creature that broke the fence in Happy Valley headed to his place and had to be caught and tied to his fence, waiting to be retrieved by some dastardly animal abuser. "There are Arlo's cows. Lots of cows," Eric shrieked. Another impossibility. Arlo boasted about his devotion to animals, his animals, that is, although I had long since observed that Jean was more devoted than he and was glued to the place 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. While Arlo spent much of his time out delivering milk, picking up machinery or feed, or communicating to his customers his encyclopedic knowledge of everything, including religion and politics. Jean's great interest in life was the old house, the ancient barn, and the animals. They never hired help because Jean didn't trust anyone to treat their animals well. If anything ever happened to the herd, it was said, it would kill Jean. Just to please Eric, I went clicking across the bedroom to the window. To my surprise, it was just like Eric was saying. Cows were eating our flowers. Jersey cows with big udders. I clicked my way to the phone to call Arlo. The phone rang several times. I finally hung up. I dialed Hazel. Her line was busy. I thought about calling Jack. He always knew everything. In fact, as Corey said, the only thing he doesn't know is that he doesn't know everything. But I stopped short because I figured his mother would call the police and report me for child molesting. That left me. And the word was round up. I called for Freya and Sigurd to saddle up their horses. By the time they were ready to ride, it seemed that the whole herd, with swinging udders and threatening eyes, was in our yard munching marigolds. I had absolutely no idea what to do. Gather up all the rope I could find? Yeah, and do what? Tie the cows to the telephone pole like we'd done with Saudi? Yeah, they'd probably all break their necks and their udders to boot. Try to herd them into our barn? Yeah, and get their toes caught in the scaffolds. To my surprise, Freya and Sig seemed to know more about the business at hand than I did. While I stood there trying to console Eric, after all, he had reported the bad news and now, how come he couldn't ride? They began making spooky noises, slapping their reins, cutting out cows and turning them back toward the road. That's where we met the greatest obstacles. Everyone in Happy Valley, and probably boring as well, was out driving and stopped to offer tips on herding cattle, set to the tune of, "When I was only 10, I herded." Or, "My third wife's second cousin by marriage was married to John Wayne's sister-in-law." During which time the cows headed back to the marigolds. But we kept at it, Freya and Sig on the horses, Eric and me working as traffic cops. I kept looking for an opportunity to go back to the house to change my shoes, but there was too much to do. Eventually, cow by cow, those that jumped over the moon and those that didn't, was heading back down the road. At Thompson's, the herd cut off into the ditch. Eric and I kept having to jump in and lift their udders. It was a lot like you see in the old westerns. I kept hoping that Arlo and Jean would appear during a great dramatic moment. But they didn't. But Corey did. He pulled up in his truck, blocked off the road so the cows couldn't retreat, and then jumped in to help Eric and me with the udder problem. Not the other problem, but the udder problem. Finally, we had them back in their pasture and were ready to lock the gate when along came Jack, and with much bravado, he clicked the latch. After which, I jumped into the truck with Corey and Eric, and we drove back up the hill. Oh, I was tired. My feet were killing me, but my heart was beating like a Girl Scout's. We had done our good turn. According to my accounts, it paid Arlo back for the times he had to go chasing our animals. I wondered how I would handle Arlo's praise. Of course, I would stress how much Sig had done, expecting, of course, that he would at last be forgiven for the sin of riding Arlo's pony. I was in such a state of euphoria that I considered calling my friend Eugenia Krause, Happy Valley reporter for the Oregon City paper. "Yeah, maybe they'll send out photographers and you'll be on the front page," Corey said. At the peg that night, I opened the conversation even before I handed Arlo the empty jug. "Boy, did we have a lot of excitement around here today, you sure missed." But as was Arlo's wont, he interrupted me. "Yeah, there was a lot of excitement down at my place too. Jack told me about how some of the cows got out and—" As he proceeded, it was evident that we had hardly been mentioned. I went back in the house and told Corey, "I feel cheated." Corey laughed. Yeah, even if you call the Oregon City paper and tell them the whole story, you can't rely on Arlo for verification. As it happened, I saw my reporter friend soon after and told her about it. Being a first-class writer, she spotted the colonel immediately. And to think, you did it all in your spike heels.